The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon. Hello, and welcome to the Minecraft Polyworld Creation Series, Episode 3. As you should recall from last week, we have one simple goal for today's episode: finish construction of the Memory Museum. My idea of this museum is a large stone structure with lots of glass and some pillars. So since I want stone and I already got the furnaces ready to go in my little shack, I figured knock out two birds with one stone, haha, and continue my underground mining. Accruing ores, coal, perhaps diamonds, all the while getting my cobblestone to make the stone. Eventually I figure, why not just cut through all of this large mine, and so I did, beginning to strip down the walls and just amass my cobble collection. I considered too the idea of this polyworld creation, and stopped for a second while I went through this. Remember, a polyworld occurs when I load chunks in new terrain generation in a new version of Minecraft. Chunks, at least back in this time, were 16 by 16 blocks in terms of length and width, but they extend all the way up and all the way down to the bedrock in the sky. Knowing this, mining out further and further will actually generate new chunks further in my current world generations. And so polyworld possibilities will be pushed back further as well once we make the jump into alpha, which will be our next version we're going into. This is something to keep in mind for exploring, and so when we get back to that point where we will head for a polyworld, we'll likely head the opposite direction of this mine so we can more quickly get to those new chunks in the polyworld we will create. Returning to the surface, I began smelting rock and ore. In the daylight, I could freely work on the building too. As the series progresses and the museum grows fuller and fuller, I also considered logistically how I want to go about inevitably expanding the museum, and I think I'm going to dig down, simple as that. I'll make basement levels underneath basement levels so that we theoretically can keep expanding until we hit bedrock. Also, I randomly saw all these pigs spawn on this island all at once, and I thought it was pretty cute. Even though pragmatically I knew I should kill them all for meat, I just felt kind of bad when they were all grouped up like that. It's something about just seeing the one pig versus seeing the flock. You know, too much social pressure, I guess. Back down the mine I went, found some gold, neat. I kept mining, and although I knew I really only needed stone, I still had my eyes on finding something unique and interesting. I wanted to find something rare and exciting, a diamond. Don't we all? Even though it wasn't part of my immediate task when I advanced to Alpha, I'm certain that I'll want to enter the Nether and advance there too. So perhaps maybe even create a poly Nether as well, if that's a thing. So I decided to return to the first cave I stumbled upon when I originally went down. There I knew I would find more ore and the like. I was excited to re-find that feeling of vastness in Minecraft, where a shaft unlocks to another one and sprawls out further. It can be a huge time sink and hours can fly by, but it's perfect for giving players incentive to explore. It's a procedurally generated carrot on a stick, with the carrot being diamonds and ore in general, and the stick being the mine in Minecraft. Alas, there were no diamonds in this cave, but it did give me a great supply of coal which I would shortly need. I conquered through these caves, killed a zombie, and headed back up to the overworld for some more furnace action. I knew the next day I'd have to get a lot of sand, too, for all that glass I had in mind. There was still plenty to do, and plenty to explore. But for now, I would wait until sunrise to get a move on. The Ledger. Celia strode through the park, ruminating. She had to drive over an hour to reach this site, a historical landmark, hidden in a far-off rural town. But what would have been feelings of regret and annoyance were countered by her determination. I chose to study history after all, she reminded herself. But although her primary interests were modern politics and international conflicts, her stern old professor made Celia's curriculum clear and dry. He had no room for any deviation, and so what he deemed important for her to study, she studied. With a mental sigh to ease off her frustrations, she sat down on the nearest bench beside her. She looked towards the lovely array of flowers. a nice distraction from research. Vibrant yellows, purples, and teals shone off the petals of these rarer plants. The more bustling city she lived in had practically no forestry, aside from balcony plants hanging over large apartment complexes. But even then, there would be little more than the occasional rose or tulip. Nothing like in this park. It really was a lovely day. There were minimal, puffy clouds speckled over the rich, light sky. Gentle winds caused the surrounding orchards and grass to vibrate with a cozy rustling sound. Tiny melodies and notes drizzled the air from the birds calling nearby. There were even families walking around, children playing, and picnics in the more open, distant area to Celia's back. As she glanced around and took all of this warmth in, maybe, she thought, this research wouldn't be such a hassle after all. Then Celia swiftly popped off her seat with this newfound motivation. She wore jeans and a t-shirt, nothing too fancy as she was just here for research, and dusted herself off. She approached the flowers, which were surrounded by a low, black, ornamental fence, and a plaque built into it. It shined in the sun's glare, but bending closer towards it and brushing some hair out of her eyes, let Celia make out the text. To the late Mr. Randolph Agmared, whose charity and vision maintains the Taluma Historical Site. In loving memory, 1185 to 1243. That was just 2 years ago, Celia noted. Had she decided to start studying history under this new professor only a couple years earlier, she might have been able to interview Agmared. He was a well-known archaeologist and patron of Taluman research, and he probably would have been able to cut down Celia's research time in half, knowing all that he did about the topic. But perhaps this was her professor's way of forcing Celia to do more thorough scholarship. She always preferred interviews, news articles, and living evidence to create a story, not ancient manuscript translations and fourth-hand research documents. As she headed towards the site's own library, a good half-mile walk, Celia reminded herself of the entire purpose of this day trip. Celia, next week I would like you to begin research on your new project I'm assigning you. The professor's words rang in her head. Oh, so are we moving on to the 9th century conflicts now? Celia asked sincerely. No. The professor's voice was unfaltering, almost intimidating. I actually think it's time you did some new research. Celia cut in again. Great! Yes, you know I've been wanting to do a study into the ongoing Western Border Division. My sister lives around the area, and I could stay with her while looking to interview local people and politicians. Celia's words stumbled over themselves in excitement. Was it finally time to study something that she actually cared about? That, unfortunately, is not what I mean by new research. Celia's eager face turned back, embarrassed. What I mean is, I want you to study about the ancient Taluman society, and, more to the point, their economics. We have scant knowledge of how their markets worked, and I think this could be an opportunity for you, as a young scholar, to perhaps find your own niche. It's not really much of my own niche if you're picking it for me, she objected in her mind. The professor rambled on some more. Celia's memory was a bit fuzzy during this point, out of an understandable frustration. And then you should find some prudence from your work. Finally, considering all of that, the library should offer the bulk of your sources to obtain. Find what you can there and bring it my way. We'll discuss from there. And that was that, she thought. Another topic which bored her, but she would suffer through anyway. Maybe, however, she reacted too swiftly. The park was gorgeous today, and some beams of light danced off the edges of the sleek, well-polished stone library. The thing was enormous, about half the size of the park itself. Clearly, Randolph Agmared's donations had not gone to waste. Celia walked inside and began rummaging through books. The sun was just setting as one of the librarians walked up to Celia on the 3rd floor and politely reminded her the library was closing in 5 minutes. Celia put on a smile, said thank you, and returned now frantically to the collection of sources she acquired, about a 3-foot stack of books. The time flew by without her even noticing. Hours earlier, at the start of her browsing, she was in the wall-length History section to find some general overviews of the Taluman Kingdom and society. Scurrying through some couple hundred-page books, she learned of the area's 800-year span, the fall and rise of states, influential figures, cultural exports, the greater Kender region, and wars. Unfortunately, the first century of the original Tuluman Kingdom, the ancient Tuluman society, was shrouded with lackluster information. Only a dozen pages or so over these 3 large historical surveys had any details. But with her scholarly mind now at work, Celia used those dozen pages to begin a goose hunt. They cross-referenced other sources, leading to music and legends from the time, because not much factual data survived. So, this added books to Celia's stack, such as Letters and Translations of Morja, The First Tuluman King, Urknian Ceremonies, and The Original Reed Whistle. They all seemed like dead ends, and she was hoping for ancient economics, but she pressed on through them anyway. Letters and Translations of Morja referenced a half-dozen dissertations and books on the Tuluman language, ancient letter preservations, and field studies from decades past. The First Tuluman King was simply an old story, which didn't point to any sources except for a couple other related legends, which she grabbed. Urknian Ceremonies paved the way for a 5-book volume on dance, religion, and spiritualism of the overall Kender area. Lastly, The Original Reed Whistle gave Celia an uncomfortable amount of books on reeds, whistles, ancient instrumentation, and Tuluman folk songs, indexes of ancient and surviving art genres, and some modern books on how to play the reed whistle. It seemed irrelevant, but she was lost in a labyrinth of study. Those sources led to other sources recursively, and the stack of books grew and grew as the web of citations multiplied. This was where all the hours had gone that afternoon. With the little time left, she began to weed through this mountain of literature a little more critically. She did finally get to a couple economic manuscripts, but the topics had a weird slant to them. She only found an index of granite trade through the 2nd and 5th centuries in southern Kender, and Neo-Tuluman philosophy on the agricultural markets of the 2nd century. This is all just so riveting, Celia told herself sarcastically. With the couple minutes she had left now, and the glare of that librarian over her shoulder, she grabbed the philosophy text and flipped to its bibliography. She scanned over names and terms that would have been all a foreign language to her had she not spent the last few hours reading about this dead civilization. More things on agriculture, farming, famines, philosophical references, and dead ends. She must have had only 1 minute left at this point. Celia could feel that burning stare of the librarian behind her. Desperately, she grabbed the index on granite trade and did the same thing. She flipped to the bibliography, ran her gaze over the page so quickly she swore she developed muscles in her eyeballs. Nothing, flip, Kendurian granite policy, knowledge on ancient building production, and then she found it. Oh, this might be useful, Celia blurted out loud. Her eyes finally landed on one source that seemed relevant. She grabbed a piece of scratch paper amongst her pile of books and notes, and wrote down the title, number, and author. This would be on the 5th floor, correct? Celia hurriedly walked over towards the librarian and handed him the piece of paper. The librarian glanced it over, clearly annoyed with Celia for staying until the last possible minute. Yes, but remember, we're closing now, so please be— Thank you! Celia cut his words off as she ran towards the stairwell. This was it, Celia told herself. It was like finding the treasure she sought in the last possible moment. Before she knew it, the 5th floor was there. She sidestepped through 3 aisles or so, glancing over the inventory numbers, getting closer and closer to the source she needed. Then, there it was. She grabbed the book from the bottom shelf. It was tucked away and almost hidden from the rest of the world. Old and dilapidated, sure, but a swift puff of air from her mouth allowed Celia to read the title. Ledgers of the Ancient Tuluman Kingdom, with regard to the Traveling Salesman Phenomenon. This has to be the source that'll get me through this project, Celia told herself. She was trying to be confident in spite of her frustration. Even still, somehow, she knew this was it. This book had the knowledge she was looking for all along. So, with that, I pulled out the glass I had and laid out the framework for this museum. It would have 3 glass walls and a stone/glass wall on the front of the museum. I'm more of a laissez-faire type builder, so instead of getting a perfect exact schematic with the exact amount of materials needed, I took a guess at the direction I would go, used up all the materials I had for that, and then continued foraging for more. I find this to be the most liberal way to approach building. Also, if this section of footage is slightly lower quality, I apologize. I accidentally streamed playing Minecraft for 2 hours instead of recording it, which is somehow a mistake you can easily do on OBS. I feel bad for the 2 chatters who came in, as there was no sound in the recording, and it was just me playing Minecraft in silence. Weird how, even though I haven't streamed for 2 years, my stream key and everything still worked with the press of an incorrect button. Anyway, I downloaded that stream, and that's how I have this footage. I kept working on getting more glass, and as day turned to night, I smelted some. This also would be a good time to return to mining. It was a process at this point. Instead of using just raw stone and glass, however, I wanted some cobble as well to give a bit of variety, so I continued going through and through the strip mine, which was at a bit of an awkward height level since I had to go in betwixt different beds of lava. As I forged forward, I finally found it. Every Minecraft's one truest desire, a diamond. Poggers, I said out loud. Alas, I went to mine it and there was just 1 diamond, damn. No great vein for me. Anyway, to the grander point of this expedition, I returned to mining and collecting materials, headed up again to smelt, continued working on the museum. I added my 3rd chest, and the museum was turning out nicely now. I was nearly done with the walls. I knew I needed doors, and I thought some iron doors would go nicely too. Until I remembered that, like the stairs from before, the iron door did not exist yet in InfDev. Unfortunate. I got along with that wall, finally, started working on some pillars to try and add more lighting. Lighting, not lightning, that's a silly mistake. You know what's funny is actually in the original How Big is Minecraft video, I made that same audio bug. I was reading the script and it said, oh, the lighting doesn't work past the far lands, but I was like, the lightning doesn't work past the far lands. So if you go back, listen to it, you'll hear it. I say lightning instead of lighting. I slur a lot of words, dude. I'm not a good script reader, but I do what I do, you know what I'm saying? And I noticed my health was low, so I went to hunt for some pigs, but alas, I couldn't find them. Perhaps it would have been better for me to slaughter all those pigs when they were in bigger groups earlier. So, more mining, more exploring. I remembered what hoes are, so I tilled some earth as well, and I got around to finishing the ceiling of the museum. Awesome, I finally was done. I added some small, tacky chandelier, if you could call it that, and finished lighting up the place. Right now, with these older materials, this InfDev museum definitely had a really rustic feel to it. Now for this episode's item. What item should I add to this museum, I wondered? But I think I already knew the answer from hours earlier. It was time to put in the diamond. The diamond represents a treasure, something sought after and desire, something to mull over while staring at its luster, nostalgic and yearning for something more. The diamond represents a promise, and a strong emotional connection to that promise. Many more symbolic diamonds come through Minecraft, sure. Building a house, discovering the nether, killing the end dragon, and I think there are many symbolic diamonds to strive for in life. Getting wealth, success, a family, achieving dreams, etc. Whatever you really put your heart towards, you know? I'm an optimistic existentialist. You can do whatever the heck you want, dude. So this teal, lustrous gem will sit there as item number 3, representing that desire. And with that desire in our minds, now the museum's first floor and first design are complete. It is time to properly polyworldify this World 1 file. So I booted up the first version that would add changes to terrain generation, Alpha 1.2, where now biomes exist and sound works coincidentally. Listen to that satisfying click noise. Ooh, baby, yes, daddy-like. Alright, ignoring that, I do not know why I added that in the script. We set our eyes now forward, away from the mineshaft's direction and the explored area to our sides. It's time we journey through this lake beyond to uncharted territories. We'll head past the spawn chunks, and the chunks coincidentally generated by our exploration. There are unexplored pastures beyond yonder hills. There are new territories to conquer, and worlds to explore. Now we can say our world has officially become a polyworld of 1 degree. And what is expecting us across this chasm, we will soon see. Find out next time on Minecraft Polyworld Creation. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video and you would like more, make sure to subscribe and ding that bell notification. Hell, you might as well, since I know you'll watch the next one anyway, you sly fox. Also, if you'd like to directly support me, get oodles of benefits, early access, and your name in the credits, consider becoming a patron over on patreon.com. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and have a great day.